Gauravani and Managopal, and Rinaranya has entered it into the layout, and so it'll be sent, I guess, today or soon to Lalita Saki, who will proofread that, and then we'll wait for you, Gurnista, to finish the cover, and it'll be done. So that's good news. And meanwhile, I'm working on my other little book, Sakya Pranay, very poetic, short book. Happy with that. I should mention that I've finished it, but what that means in my mind is that it has a long way to go still. But it's like you say, the house is finished, it just needs some trim, And then the last, part, the finished touches take usually as long as the rest of the house to construct. So, there's editing and proofreading and design and so on and so forth. But that book will come out much sooner because it's a short book. That's the update. Why don't we go ahead and take the questions? I can't hear you now, Gurnista.
Sorry about that. So the first question is from Sajan.
Okay, Sajan. Kijai.
Dandavats Maharaj.
Can't hear you, Sajan.
Oh, okay. Let's see. We got.
Maharaj, did you do the English and mute original?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I did, and yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, very good. Yes. Thank you. So, a couple of months ago, I asked a question about the offenses to the holy name. And at that time, one of the things you mentioned in the course of your response was, can Krishna become offended? Yes. That was what you said at that time. And so, since we have heard that real religion means proper adjustment, I was wondering how we could harmonize that statement that you made with, for example, this story about Bhrigumuni kicking Lord Vishnu in the chest, and Lord Vishnu not only not becoming offended, but feeling that he had offended Bhrigumuni, as you know the story, of course. So how can we harmonize those two ideas?
Well, I think that it's clear that some people act in ways that are overtly offensive to Krishna, like saying his form is an illusion. He would take exception to that, and what to speak then of in the context of the Leela, the way in which certain people served, if you will, as adversaries, and even tried to kill him, and so on and so forth. So he takes exception to that type of activity, or it could be looked at in another way, in that, of course, in the context of such overtly offensive words and actions, Krishna liberates those adversaries or demons. And in that sense, it would appear that he really overlooks their offensive behavior. When Krishna liberated Aghasur, the Devas, they just couldn't believe it. It's said that there were redemption songs of freedom, vibrating in the not only the heavenly planets, but in the Tapalok, Siddhalok, Mahalok. These are lokas that are considered to be destinations within material existence for celibates, brahmacharis, from which it's easy comparatively to attain liberation, because the whole whole place is set up to be conducive to that. Mhm. And in those places, even they were singing, celebrating songs of freedom. And Brahma, who was near, right, Brahmaloka, if you will, he heard those songs from Tapalok, Maharlok, and so forth. And what were they all saying? They were like, "Oh my God, this person who is Agas, or Aga means sin. He was thought to be sin personified, has been liberated." Hmm? In the context of trying to devour not only Krishna, but all of his friends, and by way of swallowing and destroying his friends, the hopes and aspirations of everybody in Braj. Is a very demonic figure, if you will. And Krishna gave him liberation. Right? Krishna entered inside of his mouth, following his friends, and his heart swelling in karuna rasa, karuna rasa for his friends. And Agas really embarrassed by that. He wanted to swallow them up, and as a result, he thought Krishna would lose heart and he'd be easier to defeat as well. But seeing the compassion of Krishna, feeling the radiance of the compassion of his heart for his friends and so forth, well, Aga's own heart melted, and he became, by Krishna's grace, qualified for liberation. But of course, he had to come out of his head, so right, came out, and then he had to wait for Krishna to come out of his mouth. At which point he entered into the body of Krishna. So these the defeat, if you will, the slaying, if you will, of these demons can be seen as rather the liberation of these demons, and that Krishna is not taking any offense.
Right.
Putana tried to poison him. What could be more dastardly than that? The mother puts poison on breast and tries to poison her infant, child. It's a big news story.
Sure.
It would be in today's world. So, but Krishna accepted her as a mother and liberated her. Of course, she was slain in the context of that, and you have to die to be liberated, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes Krishna is looked at in this way by the devotees, and for good reason. And as such, learned devotees, like who could be more learned than Uddhava, who is the Shastric advisor of Krishna in Dwarka. He said, "Oh, Bhakyam Stanakala Kutam." He said, "Oh, who could be more merciful than Krishna?" Putana, by putting poison on her breast, tried to slay him as an infant, and he gave her a form of Vatsalya Rasa, accepted her as a mother. Inconceivable. So he concludes, and this is Uddhava, you have to understand who he is as a figure in the Leela, very, very intelligent, wise, Shastravit, fully informed about the argument of the scriptures, the revelation. And he said, so who in their right mind would take shelter of anyone else, given how merciful he is? So this is often how the devotees look at Krishna's acts or Krishna's response in relation to those who are overtly offensive. So you can say, as you're kind of asking about, you cite the example of Bhrigumuni and the Brahmin kicking the chest of Narayan, and Narayan taking it as a blessing and so forth. Well, that's an example. I suppose you could say that Krishna's teaching how to respect in the world the Brahmins, who are the bearers of religious, the overseers of religious rites and so on and so forth. The teachers, in the Vedic society, and they would teach ideally by example. Of course, that has been corrupted in the Kali Yuga. That's we find that at the onset of the Bhagavatam, the Brahminical class has been corrupted. But so he wanted to teach in that way, right? But he didn't accept offense. So how can we harmonize all this with my statement that he accepts offense? One way to look at that is that the devotees, they take offense that someone has acted that way in relation to Krishna. And so if the devotees take offense, then Krishna acknowledges that, and it goes on record. If you have upset my devotees, then you've upset me. Then I'm upset. And so then there'll be repercussions, right? And of course, if another way to look at that is that Krishna accepts offenses. Well, he may not accept any offenses to himself in the way in which we're talking about it, right?
Yes.
But still we say that Krishna accepts offenses. So another way to look at that is if his devotees are offended, then he accepts that offense. So he accepts the offense when devotees are offended. Otherwise, he doesn't accept any offense.
Oh, that's very good news. Thank you, Maharaj.
And of course, if devotees are offended, that means bhakti is offended. So if one offends bhakti, who is the very personification, in the fullest measure of bhakti. Bhakti has an active ingredient and an emotive ingredient. When these both are fully manifest, we go to the actions of bhakti and sadhana bhakti. This should result in emotion, bhava. When the action in sadhana bhakti results in the emotion of bhava bhakti, then your bhakti is really fully informed, right? Fully informed. And there's a kind of a practice, if you will, in bhava bhakti that's fully informed, that churns bhava into praying. So what was the point? So I got a little distracted there with my own thoughts, but bhakti is fully expressed, if you will, or most fully represented from an emotional point of view, from a bhava point of view, in the person of Radha. So Mahabhav Swarupini, right? She's the form of the fullest expression of emotional, psychological, emotional love for Krishna. Her name is Radha, means who is the best worshiper, right?
Yes.
Right. So the word aparad is related.
Aparad.
It goes against worship. It goes against worship. To go against worship. But it means to go. So in the full sense, it means to go against Radha, who is the personification of the fullest idea of worship, of love. So you can imagine, Krishna doesn't take offense, but if someone offends Radha, do you think he will be offended? Well, I think he has cause for that. Jai, Radha Govinda ki Jai.
Jai, thank you so much, Maharaj. Jai.
Okay.
All right, the next question is from here. It's from Peppi, Omkar's partner. It goes like this. Repeatedly, I have noticed that in Hinduism, Vishnu is seen as the fountainhead of divinity and Krishna as his incarnation. At what point in Vaishnavism did this order get reversed so that Krishna is instead the highest personality?
Good question. Yes, Vishnu is God. Narayana, Vishnu means all pervasive. Narayana, in whom everyone is contained, right? Everything is sheltered within him. So he has different sides of himself, if you will, like a person has different emotions and expresses them and then appears differently to different people while expressing those emotions. So these are the different, and unlimited they are, but these emotions are the different expansions and avatars of Narayan, right? We look at them, some of them historically, some of them as allegorically. But when we say allegorically with regard to, your Varaha or Kurma, Matsya, and so forth, it doesn't mean they don't exist in Vaikuntha. So anyway, that's a side point. But different avatars. How many are there? Bhagavatam says, asankhya, uncountable, innumerable faces of God. And Narayan is God. So the common understanding is that Krishna is one of the faces of Narayan. Right? And so your question, pertinent, when did that change? Well, it didn't really change. I guess there's always been the fact that Krishna is the source of Narayan. But when did this theological insight, drawing on the sacred texts, become a prominent argument or a revealed and nuanced insight? It's understandable that from a broader perspective, well, yeah, Krishna is one of the faces of Narayan. Narayan is God. Revelation is something that develops over time. If you take a lotus flower and you put sun on it and water it, it will open. And more sun, it will open and open and open, right? It's the same flower. Everything is contained there from the beginning, but everything is not seen. So when you take the sacred text, when you take the revelation, you take the Shruti, for example. Shruti means the sounds of the Vedas and Upanishads. They are full of mantras. They're like mathematical formulas. They're like the numbers that have personalities. Numbers have personalities. Who was it? Plato, I believe it was, posited the idea that numbers have a transcendental realm, if you will. So these mantras of the Vedas, they're like numbers, like equations. And this is called Shruti. It means it's heard. It's not authored. Just like in math, there are two schools of math. One school is that math is discovered, and the other is that it is invented. So the discovery school is a better school. That the equations are discovered, right? So this is just to give you an idea about the Shruti. Now, then there's a second body of Vedic text we call the Smriti. And what the Smriti is in general, Smriti means remembered, recollected, heard, and recollected. So it's heard, reflected upon, and reflecting upon it, you're remembering it and reiterating it. So this is done by the human hand. Sages, no doubt, saintly persons, but it's thought to have a beginning in time. In a broader sense, this Smriti doesn't have a beginning in time because it really is only something that is found in the Shruti, but was brought out and made more readily understandable and available through the meditations and insights of saintly persons. So when you come to the Smriti texts, let's say, for example, a good example of that is the Puranas. These Puranas are like they have a historical kind of a feeling to them, because they relate histories. The Vedas are said to give commands like a king. Do this, do that, no questions asked. The Puranas are meant to instruct us to do the same things and not to do other things in a different way. Like a friend will talk to you rather than a king. Or maybe a stern father would say, do this. Don't ask any question. Just do this. Don't ask why. Just do this. Now, the friend will say the same thing. You should do this. And let me tell you a story. Your friend tells you a story, and through the story, an example is drawn of why you should do this act, because somebody in the past did this and this happened and so forth. So a friend is a different way of talking to us, right? So the Puranas are said to speak in a friendly voice. And then you have your kavya, your poetic texts. They speak to us the same truths, but in the language of a lover. Love has its own language that only the lover and beloved can understand. Why you call Omkar, whatever the things you call him, we don't know. But you know, and he knows. So that's the more secret, if you will. So when we come to the Smriti text, then you know, in a broad sense, you're going to include texts like the Kavyas, the Puranas, all the texts other than the Shruti itself. But they're all telling us what the Shruti is saying, revealing to us what we would not on our own be able to draw out. Now, when you come to the Puranas, amongst them, a number of them, there are 18, they glorify one particular Purana called the Bhagavad Purana, another name for which is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is an effort on the part of its author or authors, as one may, different ways to think about that, on the part of Vyas, let us say, and his editors, which draws heavily from Vedanta, from the Upanishads. Shruti Saro may come, it is said in Bhagavatam. It is the saram, the cream, the essence, it means, what rises to the top of milk. If you let it sit, right? You make it a little cold, the milk will rise, the cream will rise to the top. This is the saram, the essence. When I was a kid, when I was young, then milkmen, we used to have milkmen who would come and drop milk at the neighbors' houses, in our house, and so forth. There were different companies that had their milk trucks that would come around. So the mothers would look and compare which bottles of milk had the most cream, which rose to the top. And then they would buy from that dairy. That is the essence of the milk, the richness, right? So, Shruti Saramekam, Bhagavatam says about itself. It is the very essence of the Shruti, of the Vedas. But drawing as it does from the Sanskrit tradition, high sounding, elevated, in other words, even to pronounce the Shruti verses and mantras, it requires certain qualification. And if you pronounce it wrong, you're going to get an opposite effect, perhaps. So it's very high and elevated. So the Bhagavatam is an attempt to take from the Sanskrit high tradition and make it available by combining it with aesthetic, poetic considerations. And as a result, it has three voices. I said the Vedas have a voice like a king, the Puranas have a voice like a friend, the Kavya, the dramatic text, the poetic text, have a voice like a lover, right? And we find all three voices in the Bhagavatam. He speaks like a king, speaks like a friend, he speaks like a lover. Nigamakalpataro galitam phalam shukumakalam dadrabasam vitam pibata bhagavatam rasam malayam muhuraho rasika bhupi bhavukaha. In its onset, its introductory verses, three of which there are the third, it defines itself also as a kavya. Nigamakalpataro galitam phalam Sukumukad amrita drava samvitam pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam. Rasam alayam. It is a book of rasa. Rasa is the essence of poetry. It's the very heart beat of poetry, rasa. And Raso Vaisa, he is Rasa. Mm. Brahman is Rasa. How can Brahman be Rasa? Mm. Only if Rasa has, if Brahman has two components, Shakti and Shaktiman, interacting. Radha and Krishna, the two, is the two. When we say Krishna's two, Bhagavan Swayam, we're saying Krishna is the source, right, of Narayan. He's the source of all divinity. We're saying, who are we talking about? Who are we talking about? We're talking about Krishna. We're talking about the Krishna who's standing next to Radha, not any other Krishna. If he's not standing next to Radha, or his heart is not beating for Rasa, for Radha in separation, then it's not Swami Bhagavan. So Brahman is Rasa, means Radha and Krishna. Rasa requires both an object of love and the love itself. Krishna is the object of love. Radha is the, as we said earlier, the very personification of that love. Mahabhav, Rasaraj, Dui Ek Rupa. That's another thing. Mahabhav, Radharani, Rasaraj, Krishna, the king of rasa. Dui, the two. Ek Rupa, they became one form. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what did he do? When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came on the scene of the world, where on earth, where the religious ideal is can be found from the primitive societies to the most sophisticated societies, in one form or another. Human life, religion becomes a thing. People want to do away with religion. Sometimes some people, of an atheistic temperament, they want to do away with religion. And there's a thinking today that by artificial intelligence, we'll create, humans, and we'll demonstrate that humans are nothing more than machines. We can make a machine conscious. And by making a machine conscious, a robot, a bot, right? Conscious means it has feelings. You can talk to Chat GPT, but Brenda Runny was recently told me that she was having a conversation with the Chat GPT, that about some philosophy and some translations and so forth. And she said, "Thank you very much." And then the chat said, "Thank you, Hare Krishna." So anyway, they think that they can, through artificial intelligence, which there have been so many advances in. Of course, it's folly to think that they're close, even near to creating a machine that has consciousness. The two things are contradictory, really. That a physical structure, something consisting solely of physical components, which are quantitative in nature, will have a qualitative experience. That this is, of course, the what's the argument called? The hard
problem.
Hard problem of consciousness. The hard problem, coined by an Australian philosopher, I forget his name. Chalmers, yeah, Chalmers. Hard problem. The hard problem is they're trying. The problem is they're trying to show that consciousness, mind, and consciousness. Mind we see as something that is like quasi-conscious, but consciousness proper can be reduced to, or can be explained to being nothing but just physical stuff, moving in a certain way in the brain, and then this feeling comes. Well, this attempt to reduce consciousness to the physical is what he called the hard problem. It just doesn't. It's too hard. They're different. Physical matter is non-experiential. For experience to arise out of non-experience, that's not going to happen. So there's a school, and it's growing and growing and growing, that's opposed to this idea of reducing consciousness to matter and just accepting maybe consciousness is different from matter, or it's not an emergent property of the brain, but it underlies all of the physical world and so forth. That's the direction that this philosophical current with regard to consciousness, which is huge. What am I and what's out there? Who's asking the question? What's out there? This is what life's all about. That's the direction it's going, which is in the direction of Hinduism, of Vedanta, the Bhagavatam, and so forth, right? Yeah. So consciousness, how we got there? So anyway, off on a tangent, but when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes into the world, I'm speaking about the world. The world is a place where religion is always present. People can try to do away with it. As I was saying, science may try to do away with modern materialism as a philosophy, materialistic philosophy will try to do away with it and reason that there's no self, there's no consciousness, there's no soul, let's say, and so forth. And one of the ways they're trying to do this, as I was saying, is through artificial intelligence, to develop a robot that has feelings, right? But I say, if you created a robot that had feelings, would you do away with religion? If that robot was fully human, no, it would start asking why. Like all humans do. That's what humans do. They want to know why. Why is a qualitative question, meaning, value, purpose, that physical stuff does not have unto itself. Matter only matters if it matters to us, conscious beings. The objective world only matters if it matters to this subjective world, the I am. That's what's important. So, at any rate, in the human society, which is we look at it, the realm of religion, the place amongst all the locos or realms described in the Bhagavatam is most conducive to asking the religious question, dharma jignasu, atatu dharma jignasu. Now, in human life, as opposed to animal life, insect life, plant life, the human body affords us the opportunity to ask why, because the consciousness, the self is more pressing, it's coming more to the surface in the human form of life than it is in the less complex forms of life. So it's asking about itself. Why? Why am I? What is the purpose? What is the meaning? These are the questions to these. The answers to these questions cannot come from nature. Nature can push us in the direction of where we can find the answers. They have to come from the world of consciousness, the qualitative world. They can't come from the quantitative world. There's no why to that. You understand? So in human society on Earth, this is the place of religion. So we find over the centuries, over time, different insights. This is theology, right? Into the thinking about revelation. There are revealed texts, whether it be the Bible, the Quran, the Lotus Sutra, in our case, the Bhagavatam, the Gita, the Bhagavatam. These are all insights about the inner world. We say, go within or go without. There's nothing out there. You want to know what's out there? Nothing. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. The real gain is internal. Your thoughts are fixated on things. And the things come and go, therefore the thoughts are constantly flickering, and there's no peace of mind. There's something that remains steady in all the flickering, and it's you, the Atma. Put your mind on the Atma. The mind will become peaceful. No more flickering, going here, there, and everywhere. Udarat Atman Atmanam Atmavatmano Bandhur Atman Ripur Atmanaha. Mm. Oh, the mind. This is the sixth of the senses, right? Mind, sixth sense. Mm. You have hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, seeing, thinking. They all work because of the mind. If the senses are in touch with a thing, but the mind is somewhere else, you won't experience it. We're not fully. Right? The mind is the place, is quasi-subjective. It takes on the qualities of consciousness. It's a form of subtle matter. It takes on the qualities of consciousness. So it's a vehicle in yoga. If we take the mind, this verse I quoted from the Gita, Udarat Atmanam, Atmanam Abhasadaya, Atmaiva Atmano Bandhu, Atmaiva Ripu Atmana. It is a Bandhu, it is the Ripu. It is the friend, it is the enemy. It is the enemy. If the mind is fixated on sense objects for the pleasure of the senses, a material identity is going to arise out of that, which we'll be attached to, seek to protect and maintain, but cannot be maintained. Recipe for problem, right? But so the mind is the enemy in that case. But if the mind is trained to focus within, on the Atma and its shelter, the Paramatma, and then we can remain in touch with sense objects for the pleasure of Bhagavan, for his senses, then a spiritual identity will arise. Out of sadhana, siddha will come. In the very same way that our material identity comes, our spiritual identity will come. So in the world of religion, as I say, over time, right, different experiencers, sages, have commented on that subjective world, that internal world. Our conviction is, and we think it's subjective, that Hinduism has gone deeper into that world. We may say in some religions that God has no face. You can't give God a name because they're thinking face and name are part of this world. But in Hinduism, God's given a name, many of them, and faces, many faces, right? They say these faces are transcendental. These names are transcendental. They've gone deeper. So of course we're Hindus. We Vaishnavas within Hinduism. This is our conviction, but there's some objectivity to that. We won't go into the whole argument why we've chosen Hinduism over Catholicism or over Islam and so on and so forth. But yeah, one of the reasons is because of Krishna. Krishna's two, Bhagavan. There are different faces of God. Buddha is one. Christ is one. Krishna is one. Which one is which? What does the Krishna represent? Oh, yeah. This now becomes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's argument. He came on the scene, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then he took the Bhagavatam amongst all these sacred texts and said, this book has all three voices. In this book is ultimately about, it is speaking about Brahman as rasa. Means now the aesthetic consideration. I said there's the Sanskrit consideration, there's the aesthetic consideration. The Bhagavatam is these two things are brought together. Looking at God from an aesthetic point of view, we cannot help but, which he is looked at in the Bhagavatam, we cannot help but conclude that Krishna is there is more to Krishna than Narayan. There's more to Krishna than Narayan. Yeah, that is a fact. And I will just cite something for you in this regard to help you appreciate this point. Namudyate bra bapuse taridam varaya gunjabatang sa puripichila sanmukaya vanya sraje kola betra vishana Venu Lakshma Shriye Nupade Pashupangajaya. This is a statement of the Bhagavatam. It's a statement made by Brahma in Bhagavatam. Now, Bhagavatam, it obviously was composed prior to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And different persons examined it to one extent or another, but the Chaitanya Sampradaya made this their central focus, Bhagavatam, for the kind of reasons that I'm describing. And in the Bhagavatam, here we have a statement, for example, of Brahma, chief of the gods in one sense, in this world other than Vishnu, Shiva. He says, No midyate bra vapuse tararambaraya. This is a very beautiful verse because Brahma is transitioning from Adikritya Das to Sakyarasa. Adikritya Dasya, he has an appointed position. Adikritya means appointed as a servitor in this world. But in Bhagavatam, we find him in the 10th canto. He's transitioning from that ego to an ego of a friend of Krishna. In the midst of Krishna Lila, he saw Krishna's extraordinary activities when Krishna manifested himself as all the calves and cowherd boys, showed innumerable Narayans emanating from himself. Brahma saw all this. He made this statement, Namudyate Brahm Babuse Tarirambaraya. He says, Nama Idya. I offer myself, my pranam to you. Namodyate. Namo Idyate. Abra Vapuse Tarirambaraya. You who are like a rain cloud. The rain cloud is very friendly in India because it comes to save everyone from the scorching heat of the summer. Tadirambaraya. And you are wrapped in a garland, in a garment like lightning. You look like a rainbow, like a rain cloud wrapped in lightning. Effulgent. Lightning is the dress of Krishna, right? He wears this color cloth. It is similar to the color of Radha's complexion. It's Tarirambaraya, he says, and Gunjabatangsa Paripichala Sandukaya. Your face is resplendent, framed as it is by gunja berry earrings on the two sides, and paripicha, by a crown of a peacock's feather. Your face is beautiful, but these ornaments frame it and make it more, bring attention to it. And Banya Sraje, you have a garland made of just leaves and flowers from the forest. The implication is, and these are things that are made by your friends. These things are gathered by your friend. They gather these gunja berries, make them into little earrings. They pick up the peacock's feathers, and here, you should wear this crown. They make a garland for him from the forest flowers and leaves and so forth. Yeah. And he says, Banye Sajay. Kavala, Vishana Venu. Kavala Bete Vishana Venu. You have a horn, like from an antelope horn that you blow on. You have a stick for herding cows. You have a venu, a flute Hmm? Lakshma Sujay. These are your Lakshma Sujay, your beautiful ornaments. These are your characteristics. It means you are distinguished. This is the point. That's the answer to your question now. You are distinguished. You are set apart. Hmm? Who are you set apart from? Brahma is speaking. Who is he set apart from? When Brahma was born, he was born from the lotus of Vishnu, coming from his navel like an umbilical cord. He saw Vishnu as his source, right? He thought Krishna, then he saw Krishna, who spoke to him. And he thought Krishna is the form of Narayan. But now he's seeing it differently. What is it? He said, you are so beautiful with that peacock feather. And these gunja berries. Narayan doesn't wear gunja berries. He wears emeralds and gold and so. And you have this simple forest flower garland, and you have a stick and a horn and a flute. And all these things, Lakshmi Shajay, they beautifully set you apart from Narayan. They distinguish you, Mridupade, Pashupangajaya. And your feet, which are very soft and tender, standing before me, Kabula. In your left hand, you're holding yogurt and rice and fruit. And he's describing some characteristics of Krishna that are, from an aesthetic point of view, separate him from Narayan and arguably make him more beautiful, more accessible, more attractive. In this form, he can be loved like a friend. He can be loved like a child. He can be loved like a lover. Narayan, you cannot relate to him like that. He's God. He's God, and he is the object of love. And then there's you, the worshiper, and there's a distance between the two. And that distance is crossed when the object is Krishna, because the love that he can accept is the love that's not like this. It's a love like this, right? And kissing him on the cheek, even in Sakyarasa or in Vatsalya Rasa, so to speak of Madhurya Rasa. So when we look carefully at the Bhagavatam through the eyes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, how can we not say that Krishna's, as the text itself says, Krishna's too, Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the source of the Narayan. Brahma himself is saying it. This is the point where he had this epiphany. Krishna is the source of Narayan. He's more beautiful. He's aesthetically, there are aspects to him that we don't find in Narayan. And what they translate into is accessibility, intimacy with the absolute. That's not possible in the same measure with Narayan. And that's not to slight Narayan, but that's a form of Krishna. So when did this happen? This really comes out through the Chaitanya Sampradaya, but it's not an event in time, as I said, because the Bhagavatam is rooted in the Shruti itself. But over time, as I say, different persons bring out like the sun on the lotus, making it open and seeing more what's there than you could have seen otherwise. So I would attribute this to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his contribution, drawing as he did and his followers did on Srimad Bhagavatam. And when you make the argument, it's almost like, well, wow, that's pretty obvious. It's like, wow, why didn't anybody figure that out, right? So God has his way of revealing himself through different incarnations and sadhus and so forth, has his own time for that, right? But it's a fact that this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sampradaya brought out in our particular paribar or sect family. coming from Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, has done really, I don't want to say more, but almost like everything to making this known in the world, in the world of scholarship amongst Indologists and so on and so forth. My Guru Maharaj's campaign in particular, he took it to had his disciples take his books to every university, to Indologists, make this argument. And so it's become, it's an acceptable argument. It's a change. You have to look at these arguments like Shankar came with his Bhashya, his commentary on Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. Then Ramanuja came and said, well, I think we should take your Advaita and Vishishta Advaita. Let's nuance that. And here's why. He's not bringing anything new, but he's showing something that was there that wasn't seen previously. Look at it from that angle. So, a long answer. Does that help? Yes, Krishna's two Bhagavan Swayam. Okay, good. So, what else?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Pepe, you didn't hear Pepe, but she was very appreciative. I had the mute on.
I could see her.
Good. Jai Bhakti Dasi says, Dandavats, my Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Kavi Atulananda Acharya Swami, who took sannyas from Srila Tripurari Maharaj, would like to hear from Srila Tripurari Maharaj about the meaning of the word Kartik, and I will take notes. I guess she's taking notes so that she can share them with Maharaj.
I don't know any Sanskrit meaning for the word Kartik. You can look it up in a dictionary. Let's say it will define it as a particular month. But I will say this, that Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj, my Siksha Guru, related it to Kirtika. Now, he was a Sanskritist, so I think he's saying that they come from the same root, verbal root. So when you look at a Sanskrit word and you look at the verbal root, then you can posit different meanings from the word. Given that this such and such is the verbal root, here we can say this is also being said here, aside from what else you may draw from the word. I'm not a Sanskrit, that's just kind of a broad explanation or statement about how it's interesting how precise and yet how multidimensional Sanskrit as a language is. So precise, there are many words that we can't really define in English and Sanskrit. And those many words have many meanings. So it's very precise and it's very multidimensional at the same time. So I believe what he meant when he drew the word Kartik and Kirtida. Kirtida is the name of Radharani's mother, Kirtida Devi Ki Jai. Vrishabhanu Nandini, she's the son of Vrishabhanu Raj and the daughter, of Vrishabhanu Raj and his wife Kirtida. So he connected the two, Kartik and Kirtida, and in this way he underscored the Puranic statement from the Vishnu Purana that this month of Kartik is identified with Radha. So we identified the name of the month with the mother of Radha. The mother is giving the daughter, right, to the world. So he made a connection like that. He also, what else did he say in this regard? Kartik is the month that comes after Agrahayana. These months have different names, but Agrahayana is a name for the month that follows the Kartik month. And in the Gita, Krishna says, among months, I am Agrahayana. So he reasoned that the month that precedes the month that represents Krishna must be a month that represents Radha. Because we say Radha Krishna, Radha Govinda, Radha Gopinath, Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Raman. Without Radha, as I said earlier, there's no Krishna, right? Without that Swarup Shakti, Brahman is still. And she is the fullest expression of the Swarup Shakti. And as a result, you can say, Krishna is the fullest expression of Brahman. So that's what I can say to you about the name of the month, Kartik. Shri Bhakti Kavirtunanda Maharaj. Vijay. What else?
Okay, there's actually a follow-up on the first question about whether Krishna can take offense or not. Mohini had a follow-up question on that.
Okay.
Dandavat Pranam, Guru Maharaj. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Yeah, it was just related to your answer when you said that, Krishna doesn't take offense to something against himself, but to his devotees he does. And I wondered whether that's the same with Lord Nityananda, because I wondered this for a while, actually, because it's sort of related to some prayers that I say daily, and I think I told you about these slippers that I had of Lord Nityananda, and when I was given them, I was asked to put them on my head every day and pray. But I always thought, when I say these prayers, I always would pray that he would put them on everyone's head, in a kind of maybe like a naive sort of way, I don't know, or idealistic. But then one day not so long ago, I thought that maybe what if he doesn't want to put them on everyone's head? What if there are those who might have upset his devotees? And so I wondered whether that was the same for him as for Krishna.
So you're asking, will Nityananda take offense if someone offends Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? For example.
I suppose, or a devotee of Lord Nityananda.
Okay, or a devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Right. Sometimes he's referred to as the Kanda Guru Tattva, and what is the other term? Kanda means, there's a term that says he doesn't get angry.
Akrota Paramana.
Akrota means anger. Akrota. He doesn't get angry. The classic example, of course, of this is that he was offended personally by Jagai and Madai, but he didn't accept the offense. Nityananda was not offended. He was physically offended. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took offense, but Nityananda Prabhu tried to pacify him and ask him to give a blessing to Jagai and Madai, which he did. So he doesn't accept offense to himself, apparently, right? Does he accept offense to if his devotees or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees are offended? Yes, he would take exception to that. And I believe there's an example in the Chaitanya Charitamrita also. Now it's not coming to my mind exactly, but I believe there's an example.
Maybe in the house of Krishnadas, when Miniketa and Ramdas is offended.
That's not the example I'm thinking of, but that's an extended example. That's an example where one of his devotees considered that someone else was offensive towards him, and he took exception. Yes, he would take exception to that, but that doesn't mean that your prayer is bad. He wanted Nityananda Prabhu to be, you're very merciful, please be merciful to everyone, even the offenders. He will like that prayer.
Thank
So you
you.
don't have to worry about that. Who are the fine gentlemen sitting behind you?
So we have there's Prem, who you might recognize, who was with us in
Okay, right. Yeah, yes. Now I remember you. Yeah.
Up to Ian is next to him on the sofa. Then we have Amrita Gopal, Krishna Maharaj, and
Manachi.
and
Yes. Right, we've met before.
and
Guru Maharaj ki jai. All right. Yes. Okay, we know him. All right. Well, nice to be with all of you. I'm sorry I took so long on a couple questions, but it was an interesting and inspiring topic. So if we have not had time to answer others, hopefully we'll be able to next week. Go to Premanande. Go Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Saguru Maharaj ki jai. Okay, we have next Thursday, we have Sham Sundar continuing his, let's see here, the 24 Gurus of the Bhagavatam, and it's going to be the Python this week. So see you all there. Haribo.